Hey guys, welcome to another project, and this is called India. And this is quite a fun and cute bag. Now the lining is not pleated, it's kind of plain inside. It's got a rounded base and I have used a recycled denim. So let's go ahead and get started with this project. That's how it looks when I've finished pinning all around the bottom of the bag. So let's go to the sewing machine and sew on, and sew long, sewing the pleats. We're going to sew a 1/2 inch stitch, and in here, to give yourself a That's how the bottom of the bag looks, and the bag is now taking shape, and we'll get there in just a little while. So we're going to keep this aside and start working on the lining, because we need the lining to. So there is the bottom panel for the lining, and there's the 2 pieces of lining. We just need 1 piece right now, and you have got the pocket piece. So if you decide to do a zipper pocket, go ahead and do it, no worries at all. Now this pocket is just a patch pocket, there's no zip in this bag. So we're going to go and fold and iron and prepare the pocket. If you wanted to, you can cut another piece and go and sew the pocket on the other side as well. I'm going to show you just one side. On your pocket piece, you see there's 2 notch marks. So we're going to fold on those notch marks like so, and that's your top fold, and press it with a hot iron. And now we're going to tuck 1/2 of it in, and then do that all the way through, and then iron it, so you've got a proper crease to go and finish the top of your bag. And now we will go and fold it about 1/2 inch, and then fold the other side as well, about 1/2 inch, and then we're going to go and fold the bottom as well. And now when we start sewing, this usually kind of peeps out, so we're going to tuck those corners in and then press it so it's out of the way when you sew, and its corners are neatly tucked in, and you will get a really neat rectangular pocket with the iron. Now leave it for a few seconds so it kind of takes the shape. And now again, the top part here, we're just going to tuck this in like so, and then press it and press it. We come back to this tucked bit later on. What you're going to do is you're going to open it up, sew a stitch on the top here so this part is closed, and then you will still have your fold. You're going to go and place the pocket on top of your lining, and then sew a net stitch all around. So let's open this up and sew a top stitch. I've gone and placed my pocket on the lining in the right position. You'll see it when we go back to the table. So tuck the corners in again, just make sure they're tucked in properly. And then we're going to start with the back stitch. Attach the pocket. Again, when we come back to this corner, we're going to tuck this in. Sometimes it's opened in the fold. This is about 2–2.5 inches from the bottom of the lining. again, when we come to this corner, tuck it in because we've already got the fold, so it will sit. We fold the corners and finish with the back stitch. There is your pocket sewn in. The pocket is from the bottom, it's about 2.5 inches away from the bottom. So we're going to place the other part of the lining like so and go and sew the side seam on both the sides, starting and finishing with a back stitch. Let me go and do it off camera and then come back and there is the lining now sewn in, and I have also done 2 top stitches by opening the seams. I'm not sure if you can see properly. There you are. And it's not necessary, but it just gives you that really soft and smooth finish. If you wanted, you could do that, or just press it open if you don't want to. Now this is the bottom panel of the lining, so I've folded into half, notch mark, then again I'm going to fold it into half like so and do a notch here and do a notch here. So now we are going to turn this inside out and just make sure the bottom of your pocket is going to the bottom of the base. So we're going to go for the center fold. If you haven't made a notch, just match the seam to seam and make a notch here, make a notch here. And now what we're going to do, go and match the center notch to center notch and place a pin. And again, center notch to center notch and place a pin. The rest of it, the round, should actually sit in perfectly. If it doesn't, then if you need to do a tiny pleat either to the base or the main fabric, don't worry too much about it. It's not going to kind of deteriorate from the look of the bag. Mine's sitting almost perfect. You just have to position a little bit and move it so it sits around. So let's go to the sewing machine. If you need to pin it, go and pin all around. It's easier to sew if you pin it. I'm going to pin in a few places and then we go to the sewing machine and sew the base together. You can start anywhere and it doesn't matter where you start. I'm just starting in the middle here. And take the pins as you go along and we're going to sew a 1/2 inch stitch. Remember, there's no pleats inside the lining. Like the main part of the bag has got pleats in the front. The main part of the bag has got pleats around the bottom area. This hasn't got any pleats. Okay, there is the bottom base we have sewn for the lining, and that is the main part of the bag. I've turned to the wrong side. Now place them together like so and bring the notch to notch in the center and place a pin. And then we're going to turn this over, place the notch to notch in the center. Don't worry about the sides, just the center notch in the front and the back. Let's place a pin. So now we're going to go, and you could go and sew all around, but what is necessary is sew the straight line along the 2 sides of this base. So we're going to go and sew here, attaching the base of the main fabric to the lining, and we're going to sew along here a straight line and attaching the base to the main fabric, attaching the lining to the main fabric. Okay, so if you want to, then you could go and sew the base all around it. It's not necessary. As long as you do it on 2 sides, it's fine. So we are going to place it like that, and we're going to go and sew on top of the same stitch that you have already sewn in. Take the pins along as you sew and just go and attach these two funnels. Now go ahead and do exactly the same on the other side. So now we have attached on both the sides. Let's pull this in like that. And now bring your lining like that and then match the side seam to the side seam and pin all around. If you have sewn in if you have taken the right seam allowance, then the lining and your top of your denim should fit perfectly. In case if you're using a denim which has got the lycra in it, this may stretch a little bit. So just be a little careful when you recycle your denim. So I'm going to go and pin all around, and we are going to go and close the top of the bag, and then we're going to attach the flap and the handle. I have pinned the mouth of the bag, so we're going to just go and do an 8 stitch. This is only because we want the lining to lay flat, and when we finish this with the bias binding, this is going to sit flat. Otherwise, if you start sewing bias binding just on the pin, you may get a few wrinkles and it may not set right. So it's always handy just to put one more stitch. It's an added process, but believe me, that's going to help you a lot in a neat finish. So can you see these raw edges? We're just going to ever so slightly trim it all around. Don't cut off too much because that will eat into the allowance, but as long as you have like a neat edge before it starts fraying again, we need to bind this with a bias binding. So let me go ahead and do it, and then here on the machine we'll sew the bias binding on the top. Okay, we're going to start off somewhere at the back, and that's where your leather patches, and that's the notch mark at the back. So I'm going to give about an inch extra there and open the fold, and we're going to start sewing on the fold. Coming back to the starting point, so we are going to we're going to fold it like that and overlap this on top, but just make sure your bias binding is a little bit away from the edge here, simply because when you turn over, this is going to sit in a straight line. So let me cut this off like so and place it so this bit needs to be a little bit up and down, so your bottom bias binding is a little bit away and the top is sitting like so. We've sewn almost till the edge, and now we've come back to the starting point. We just need to close this bias binding. You could overlap this and then close it, but to get a properly neat finish, I'm just going to open this up and hold it like so. Hold it straight, and then we're going to close this line here. Don't sew the denim, just the bias binding. So if you keep it straight like that, then you should be able to sew right next to the denim. we are going to trim this extra bit off. We can trim this extra bit off, or you can just open. We can trim the extra bit of the bust banding, or you can leave it like that and then just go back and finish on the starting line. Now this bit is finished, we're going to further trim another 1/4 of an inch all around, because then we'll be able to sew the bust banding properly. So go ahead and trim this all around the bag. So once it's trimmed, we're going to fold the already folded bit. So you have the fold, just make sure the fold is straight, and then we're going to go and fold this over, bind the whole of the raw edge. I'll place it like so. You'll have to tack this if you find this difficult to do, and we are going to go and sew on top of the binding. You can either sew on top of the binding, or this is another stitch called stitch in the ditch. So you sew in between the denim and the piping. It's quite difficult to do. If you're a beginner, don't worry about it. Just go and do a stitch on top of the bust binding. I'm doing it on the denim because I've got a matching thread to the denim, so I'm doing it on the denim. When you come back to the starting point, finish with a backstitch. Okay, so there is the top of the bag finished. Now all we have to do is sew in your flap and the handle. So for the flap, see, this is the front of your bag where you have the magnetic attachment. So go on to the other side and measure from the side seam to side seam, make a center mark, and from that center mark, so keep the center mark, and then from the edge of the bag we're going to measure about 1.5 inches, and then just make a straight line mark here. So we're going to place it next to that straight line mark, like so. Center the flap onto the center mark, and we're going to measure 1.5 inches, like that, and once it is straight, like so, I'm going to place a pin at the edge, because remember this collar canvas inside this, so you can't really pin so many layers of thick fabric. So I'm just sewing that, I'm just pinning at the edge. So from the edge we're going to go and sew a 1/2 inch stitch, starting and finishing with a back stitch. So at this stage it would be useful if you take this off from your machine, because then it's very easy to sew with a free arm. And do a 1/2 inch stitch. I'm edging the foot to the edge of this flap here, simply because that's where the canvas ends. You've got to feel where your canvas ends, and your stitch should be just a little bit away from the canvas. And remember, you're sewing through the lining and the main fabric. So now we are going to flip this over. It's a little bit difficult, but it's not impossible. We are going to give about 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch. It really doesn't matter how much you give, as long as the flap will go and sit flat on the fabric here. The flap is now ready. We need to attach the handle to this D-ring. So basically we are going to go and place it like so, pass it through from there and take about 1 inch or 2 inches here, and from here we're going to fold it like so and then sew a stitch on the top. Okay, we've sewn in one side of the handle, and the other side, before you sew in, I have to remind you that instead of going blindly and just taking it in and then finding out that your handle is not matching here, because it's very important on your shoulder it sits and then both of them is balanced. Sometimes it happens when you have had your leather patch maybe slightly up and down. You may not see it on the eye, but it might be like 1/2 inch here and there. In that case, then your handle will vary as well. So the best thing is attach one side of the handle, come back and then pin it on both the sides. And then put some fillers in your bag, wear it on your shoulder, and then see if the balance is right. Only then go and finish this stitch here on the handle. I'm going to go and do that. And basically that's your bag. So let me go ahead and do this. Thank you for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the project. Leave me a comment below or send me an email. I shall see you next time. Bye bye for now.